What is the creepiest thing you've found or experienced outside that you can't explain? My brother and I backpacked off the trail. We realize how dangerous this is deep through the mountains in North Carolina and found this gnarly cave. We decided to use it as shelter for the night, and while we were making it feel like home, we heard this bell off in the distance. We were extremely weirded out considering how far off the trail we were, and we haven't seen another soul in hours. We began yelling to see if anyone or anything would reply. It began getting closer, and that's when we wielded our weapons. Finally, out of the fog, running at full speed towards us, is a soaking wet dog with a harness around his chest. He runs right past us, as if he were late to work. He kept running up the mountain full speed and we never saw him again. Edit. Here is what the cave looked like for those who are curious. Girlfriend, her sister and I were out driving around one summer night. We wound up at a small lake and stopped to just enjoy the quiet and the moonlight over the lake. My girlfriend says, "What's that?" pointing out toward the center of the lake. There was a small patch of what looked like fog just sitting there. As we sat and looked at it, I realized that it was expanding almost imperceptibly. My GF sister asked, "Is it getting bigger?" I said it was, and we kind of just laughed and watched it. Then it started getting much larger much faster. In about 30 seconds it was very dense and about 100 yards across. It was also about 75 yards from shore. We got into the car, but didn't leave yet as we were mesmerized by how fast it was growing. As it got closer to the shore and more dense, we then got properly creeped out enough to hightail it out of there. As we drove out via the winding road, we could see that the whole lake was engulfed in fog, and it was lapping over the shore, but not quite advancing past it. We decided to mark that lake off of our go back list. I love reading these creepy threads, but usually would arrive too late to contribute. I have had a lot of weird things happen to me over the years. In my childhood home mostly, which was brand new, my parents hired a contractor to build it. It began with seeing dark shadows throughout the house, just black/gray shapes. It would only happen in a glimpse while entering the room or passing a hallway. I used to wake up a lot to people standing over me. I've now learned about sleep paralysis, so I've dismissed a lot of what I saw back then. I do remember being in the finished basement of that house when I was about 20. I was tying my hair into a ponytail while looking in the hall mirror. In the reflection of the mirror I could see into the room behind me, and there was a man standing there. I could only see half of him. He was wearing something white. He had long, greasy black hair which was almost matted down. His face was so gaunt. He had black shadows under his eyes. I saw him for a couple of seconds, and then he was gone. I got my younger brother and made him go for a walk with me until my parents came home. I used to also have really vivid dreams in that house. A few months before seeing the guy in the mirror I had a dream about a woman who had almost identical features to the man. Long, greasy, untamed hair, gaunt face, and wearing white. In my dream she floated down the hall and disappeared. Since moving I haven't really experienced anything. I tend to get sensitive about the atmosphere of certain houses or locations, but luckily I haven't seen anything since. I kind of simultaneously believe and do not believe in the paranormal. I prefer to think everything can be explained, but those were some creepy times back then. TL. Doctor, I saw Severus Snape in my basement and female Snape in my dream. When I was probably 15, I was spending a fall weekend at my best friend's house. She lived on a dirt road off of a rural county road in the middle of nowhere. It was probably about 3 AM, and we were bored, so we took a walk. This being the middle of nowhere, there was hardly any light pollution, and you could see thousands of stars in the sky. It was a clear, cool night, and we were just walking along, talking, our eyes totally adjusted to the dark. All of a sudden, there was a blinding white flash, so bright, I couldn't see anything but white for a split second. As suddenly as it started, it was over, and my friend and I were sitting in the middle of the road. We both must have dropped right where we stood. It was quiet again, and the sky was still clear. Sitting there in the road, totally stunned, we confirmed that we had both been blinded by a super bright light for half a second that had apparently knocked us over. There had been no cars, no accompanying sound, just a light so bright we couldn't see anything else. We got up, went back home, and went to sleep. My friend and I drifted apart over the years, but ended up working in the same building years later, and we met up for coffee. She brought up the incident, and still remembers it the same way I do. We never figured out what happened. Posted this before, but still relevant. There's a small graveyard near my home in Michigan. About 2 years ago a group of my friends and I went ghost hunting there. It was a warm night, clear skies, and I was raring to catch a ghost on my friend's camera or tape recorder. Even a cell phone video would do. The cemetery is less than an acre, so it didn't take long to scope out. We broke into groups of 2 and 3 and traversed the grounds. I wandered with a few people, changing from group to group. I felt restless. Usually when we were ghost hunting, we cracked wise, but nobody was saying much. A group near a tall monument, at least 7 feet high, and shrouded in vines, called us over. There seemed to be a cold spot about the size and shape of a very tall man. I waved my hands through the air. It did feel a bit cooler, but that could have been my imagination. Everyone began taking pictures, claiming they could see a figure in the digital photos. I hung near the back of the group, not seeing anything. I still felt disquieted. I didn't want to be here. That was when a cold shock squeezed my hand, right between the web of flesh between my right thumb and forefinger. I cried out, yanking my hand away. It hurt. The cold radiated slowly off my hand, and I retreated towards the gate. Out. Something grabbed me. Out. I was quickly followed by the rest of the party, not so much because of my encounter, but nobody wanted to be in there anymore. It wasn't until the morning the bruise showed up. Deep in the meat of my hand. Not a bad bruise, not bad enough to turn black and blue, but definitely there. Yellow and painful, right in the spot where it'd been grabbed by that cold hand. I haven't been back. TL doctor, ghost grabbed me in a cemetery so hard I got a bruise. Saw an eyeball in the dirt once. I'll never forget it. I was helping my mom with some yard work, and with her back turned to me, I saw this white orb push up the dirt and roll in place. There was a grey iris that started up at me for a second, and then it fell back into the earth. I had no idea what it was. I felt no need to tell my mom, because there is no way she would have believed me. I was 10, and I still remember it very vividly 17 years later. Chills. When I was a kid, my grandfather had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. He was a huge part of our family, and he and my grandmother were living with us at the time. He died at the hospital the next day, and my mother and grandmother came home to tell me. That evening, we noticed that the clocks in several of the rooms had stopped at the exact time he died. A kitchen clock, the one in my grandmother's bedroom, both ran on batteries, and a watch he kept on the dresser. My grandmother didn't act like it was big deal, just that it was a sign that he was so important to us. She left them that way for about a week, then reset them, although the watch got put away and wasn't messed with. I grew up thinking that sort of thing happened all the time when people we loved died, until I realized later that it doesn't, and then it creeped me out. Also, she was a devout Catholic, so I don't know if that had anything to do with her easy acceptance of it. I was 12 or so, riding in the car with my dad and my best friend down Main Street in a suburban Pennsylvania town. Way up in the sky, all 3 of us saw 2 shiny metal orbs. They did a combination of floating in place and darting like mad across the sky. My dad slowed the car to a crawl as all 3 of us craned our necks watching through the front windshield. We watched the things for more than a minute until they picked up speed again, and then just were gone in an instant. The 3 of us talked about it excitedly for weeks. My mother didn't believe us when we got home. My dad still likes to talk about it. Unfortunately, the last time I spoke to my friend a few years ago and mentioned it to him, he had no memory of it or had blocked it out. I don't get how that's possible, and it makes me sad. Sitting on a beach at night in Dorset in the south on England. In the sea just inside the waves as they were about to break on the shore, there was this orange light. It was about the size of a tennis ball and really bright. It was flitting backwards and forward really fast as traveled along the shore, then it disappeared. There was nothing in the sky and nobody on the shore for it to be a reflection of anything. It was definitely in the water. I'm the biggest skeptic in the world, but I haven't found a satisfactory explanation for what it was. I thought maybe some kind of bioluminescent organism, but it was moving far too quickly for any fish or jellyfish. Hermits and hermit cabins in the woods of northern Ontario. Nothing will ruin a canoe trip like seeing some feral castaway of society. Literally the content for the ghost stories we tell campers. Fucking guy was just staring at me 100 meters off the trail to the left. No shirt, mangled cargo shorts and overgrown hair. Stood there for a good 15 seconds before scampering off into the woods. Still freaks me out to this day. Needless to say, we did not camp on that lake that night. This did not happen to me but my friend. She was headed to a party with an acquaintance late one evening. They were driving down a secluded road when she felt the car coming to a very slow stop. She said that she felt almost paralyzed. From their right to unnaturally large black horses silently and without moving their legs kind of floated across the road. She said that she felt a power or force that was so great it was terrifying. After they passed, the car started forward again, and that both her and the passenger were in a weird shock the rest of the way. They both felt the same weird paralyzation and the same kind of fear when the horses passed. She would love any input to what this could have been. She's tried googling it with no answers. Any ideas?